What is happening, peeps? It's your boy Ed from TechSource. Welcome to Setup Wars episode 292. Wow, there's only like 8 episodes left until season 5 is over. If you guys want to submit your setup to get featured in season 6, now's the best time to do so. Watch the video link down below to learn how to enter. But yeah, with that said, it's time to sit back and relax because you know what time it is. So you just finished building a PC and you're greeted with this horrendous watermark. Well, fear not, I got an easy solution for you. Head on over to softwarekeep.com and pick up a Windows 11 CD key. Just for my subscribers, they're offering an additional 25% discount if you use the code TS25. This goes for all their keys, including Microsoft Office for Windows, Mac, and their antivirus software. So visit softwarekeep.com or click my link below and grab a key today. Kicking off the episode is a very clean and minimal floating setup. We got an IKEA countertop hooked up against the wall with multiple brackets, 2 large triangle brackets in between 5 smaller L brackets. Now there is one major flaw with this type of setup, and it has to do with the mounting. First and foremost, you don't need that many brackets, especially for a lighter setup like yours. I personally have a very large 140-pound desk with a bunch of gear on top, and it's only being supported by 4 triangle brackets. I think 3 would have been more than enough as long as 2 of them are mounted straight into the stud. The second flaw I noticed is that you went with L brackets instead of triangle. Now, let me explain what the difference is, especially for anyone watching that wants to build a floating desk themselves. The problem with L brackets is that it doesn't have any support. So over time, the bracket will start to collapse and bend, causing the desk to tilt down, eventually to a point where it will break off. L brackets are only to be used with wall shelves or lighter furniture that doesn't hold up a lot of weight. Now, triangle brackets, on the other hand, are meant for heavy-duty mounting because the extra support on the frame will prevent the bracket from bending over time, just like what you did with the 2 giant ones for your setup. So honestly, I think 2 of those triangle brackets would have been more than enough, and maybe 1 more smaller bracket in the center, especially if the main brackets are secured against a stud. And if you wanted to go with something more hidden or unobtrusive, I would opt for these low-profile triangle brackets instead if you want to get that invisible floating look like I did with my desk. I'll drop a link to these below for anyone that wants to check them out. So the setup is used for gaming and working from home, and it took him about 5 hours to build. So this was a brand new setup project that was built in a day essentially. He does everything on his 32-inch curved monitor from Scepter that he hooked up to the desk, and below that we got the LF Esports 60% keyboard and an MX Master 3 mouse with a matching mouse pad that complements the color scheme of the setup nicely. I wouldn't recommend the MX Master 3 for gaming, however, due to its noticeable latency. I would go with an actual wireless gaming mouse instead. Depending on your budget, the Razer Viper Ultimate in white is a nice choice, the Logitech G Pro X, and even the Model D or O are very solid options for wireless gaming. The setup doesn't have any dedicated speakers, but he does have an Amazon Alexa Bluetooth speaker and the Turtle Beach Stealth 600 dedicated for gaming that he keeps on his Signum rack underneath the desk. Really great work, keeping the colors very consistent throughout the setup, even to his custom PC featuring the Ryzen 5 5600X and the Gigabyte RTX 3070 Vision OC. Personally, I think the Gigabyte B550 Vision, the motherboard, would have been a better fit with the rest of the components, especially with the graphics card, but it's still a badass system nonetheless. I'm guessing you left the trash bin on the desk since you wanted to keep the ground clean, but honestly, I would just put it next to your hamper on the ground. Trash bins should never be on the desk surface. I do have to admit there were some questionable choices, but overall I think this is a pretty dope floating desk setup. Thank you, Dom, for starting off the show. Up next is a very unique custom setup with a Scrooge McDuck theme. That's right, guys, apparently the main inspiration was from a story behind his fortune, the life and times of Scrooge McDuck. Right off the bat, one of the first things that stood out to me was the unique custom desk that he built with the help of his dad. It's got built-in LEDs around the edge and a custom-made housing for his PC, which we'll get into later. So at the age of 16, Hugo decided to move out of his parents' house and go 300 miles north to a special hockey school to pursue his passion. So the setup is actually in a small dorm room where he also sleeps in. It took him 6 months of saving to be able to build his dream setup that you see here for gaming and schoolwork. We got dual stack 24-inch monitors with 165 Hz as the main and a third monitor in vertical for multitasking and Discord. He did keep the desk very clean and minimal. There is a levitating plant on the left side for a bit of decoration and all white peripherals. He's rocking a Ducky 1.2 Mini and a Model O wireless. Nice combo. The setup is so minimal it doesn't even have speakers. Just a pair of Logitech Pro X's hanging underneath the desk next to a custom-built drawer where he stores all of his cables in. And I guess since we're down here, let's take a closer look at the awesome custom housing that was made for his PC. First off, we got a pretty beefy system down here with a Ryzen 7 3800X and an RTX 3070 Gaming X Trio from MSI. I love that he took cooling into consideration by adding 3 intake fans in the front of the housing in addition to the 3 intake fans from the actual case. And then there are 3 more exhaust fans in the case itself, which you can see. I do love that he made a cutout on the side so he's able to still see the PC, and he even made a cutout for the front USB and HDMI ports. My only concern about this custom housing is accessibility. Like, how would you get your case out of there for upgrades or maintenance? Like, is there an easy way of getting in there without taking apart anything? Hugo, if you're watching, feel free to comment down below. I would love to know. I don't think Scrooge McDuck technically has a color scheme since he likes to swap between his blue and red robe, but I'm glad you stuck with a white theme overall. I think it works well with the setup. Also, bonus points on the Scrooge decoration and props that you have added to the setup. I think this turned out pretty damn epic. Thank you, Hugo, for sharing this with us, and good luck on your studies. Coming in at number 3 might as well be our setup spotlight of the episode. At first glance, we see an epic quad display setup, but upon closer examination, we can see some questionable choices. I wonder if you guys can point it out too. First and foremost, I do want to say that this is a massive step up from your previous setups. It's crazy to see that you first started as a console gamer and the setup has slowly evolved over the past few years into what it is today, apparently just by watching setup wars. That's awesome. But being on the show is not just about showing off your setup. It also means you get some feedback on how to improve, and with that, I do want to start off and mention what the setup has done right so far. The awesome custom corner desk with excellent cable management, which is the hardest part of building any setup. Everything else after that is an easy adjustment. So let's move on to the monitor layout. This is one of the more optimal ways of doing a quad display setup right beside a TIE Fighter layout. But unfortunately, you have the bottom monitors too close to the desk, which ended up blocking off a portion of the speakers. I think the speakers would be better off sitting on wall shelves, kind of like what you did with your microphone. You can add 2 shelves for your speakers, and this way you won't have to lay them on the sides. Speaking of the microphone, I don't think you need me to tell you that the mic distance is too far. And before anyone says to me, that's probably where he puts the mic when he's not using it, well, not according to the notes. You might not have any space on the desk itself to add a boom arm, but you can always use the monitor mounts to clamp the boom arm instead. The PC tucked away in the corner being blocked off by one of your monitors is probably the least thing I'm worried about in this setup, but a simple fix to this would be to add a block or a small side table underneath it so the PC is lifted slightly above the monitors to a point where you can see it. And finally, I do want to talk about the 3D panels on the wall. It just feels a bit forced. The thing about these wall panels is that you have to really commit, otherwise it looks unfinished and out of place. Instead of those panels, I think something else would have made more sense. Maybe some posters, picture frames, or other decorative items. But that's just my 2 cents. I think the setup can definitely use a bit more spicing up. But again, I want to emphasize that you made some huge improvements over your older setups, and that is a huge accomplishment in itself. Setups are never ending, always evolving projects, and I hope you can take some of these recommendations and put it in your next setup submission. Until then, it was nice to have you on the show, James. And number 4 is Scott from Glasgow, Scotland. It's been a while since we got a submission from that country. Welcome to the show, my guy. So Scott is a piping designer who loves to game. So he wanted to build himself a nice little setup where he can work from home and game on his spare time. It took him about a year to get the setup to this point. We have a dual stack monitor layout with an ultra wide on the bottom and a 25-inch for the overhead, both mounted against the wall to achieve this cool floating look over the desk. Below that for peripherals is the Corsair K70 MK2 keyboard paired with a dark core RGB mouse. And for primary audio, we got the popular budget-friendly Creative Pebbles, but his go-tos for gaming is the SteelSeries Arctis 7s. Cables are managed beautifully underneath the desk with no complaints, and powering it all is a beautiful custom PC with a built-in screen that shows the hardware info. We got a Ryzen 9 5900X paired with a Gigabyte RTX 3070 Ti Vision. A very nicely executed gaming setup. Thank you, Scott, for sharing this with us. Unfortunately, we are down to our last setup of the episode, but we're finishing up with a banger music production and gaming setup by Vahid. He's an electric engineer from Iran who wanted to build a place where he can focus on his music and game on his spare time. I do have to admit, this is the first time I've seen someone stack two speakers on top of each other without any sort of padding in between. Surely this isn't a good idea, right? He does everything on a single 27-inch monitor from LG with a riser underneath to create additional space for his studio interface and PS4 Pro. Very good use of space while also lifting up the monitor to a comfortable height. While he does mostly everything on the single LG monitor, he also has a tablet that's used as a secondary for browsing the web and multitasking. Looks like the tablet has his very own dedicated keyboard, while the main setup uses a Black Widow and two pairs of mice, the glorious Model D and a Razer Mamba for backup. And of course, we can't forget about the full-size MIDI keyboard tucked underneath on a pull-out drawer, allowing him to seamlessly transition between both setups whenever he wants. The surface area does seem a bit cramped though. I think it would be a better idea putting the tablet on a desk mount to free up some extra space. Also, you wouldn't have the tablet blocking off one of the speakers on the left. Other than that and the speaker stacking, I think the setup looks pretty dope, especially with those RGB tubes you have in the back. It's the first time I'm seeing those in an actual setup and they look pretty freaking cool. The PC powering the setup looks like a pre-built, featuring a 7600K and an RTX 2060 Ti. In Vahid's case, the PC doesn't really complement the setup. Instead, it's kind of distracting and takes away from the presentation. Now, I'm not saying this to sound mean, but it's crucial that the PC either fits in the color scheme or at the very least complements the setup. The thing that's powering the setup is an extension of the setup and plays a very important role, not just in functionality, but aesthetics as well. Personally, I think the setup would have looked so much better without the PC and the cabinet in the picture. I would have put the PC on the bottom next to the desk and repositioned the cabinet somewhere else so that everyone can appreciate the beauty of the setup itself. This definitely has potential to become something even greater. Thank you, Vahid, for sharing this with us. I gotta take a bite of this, sorry, before I do my outro. Amazing. God damn, that's good. Oh, that tea is busting. Oh man, some good stuff. What was that? Oh, the outro, yeah. That will do it for today's video. As always, make sure you guys comment below. Let me know which of these setups was your absolute favorite. If you're sad, but also happy that season 5 is ending, do let me know by tossing a like before you head out. And if you're new here, consider subscribing because season 6 is coming up soon. Well, in 8 episodes, but it's coming very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys very, very soon in the next one.